has spoken at 2 of our AMA events. When Tim launched this book, we welcomed him back, and I know this evening he's going to give you some new ideas. It's all about net giving, taking the work out of networking. Tim's got some books here for us that he will be signing after. And if anybody's twitting or tweeting, we do have our hashtags up there as well. So we're hashtag AMA Toronto or Tim Cork 1. So please feel free to take notes or Twitter as well. So I'll turn it over to Tim.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, Deb and I go back a little while. Our sons played hockey together. That's good, Deb. I didn't even click into that one. So the X-Men, yeah. Well, at the time, I was myself and one of the other coaches were at Xerox, so we sponsored a team at North Toronto. And Deb, well, our sons didn't play on the same team, but they played against each other. So I got to know Deb's husband, Steve, very well, and because he coached one of the other teams. But you know, I'm going to talk a little bit about that tonight because the power of your network is everything. It's I do a lot of coaching. I coach a lot of executives. I'm from Toronto. A lot of people think I'm an American, so apparently I sound like an American. Maybe there's something there. I've played a lot of hockey down in the U.S., and I have some clients down there, but that's about it. So maybe it's rubbed off on me. On the networking side, though, I always ask, one of the questions I always ask people and executives and everybody else is, when you're thinking about where you want to go in your career and what you want to do with your life and everything else is, who are the people who are going to help you get there? And a good question to always ask yourself, whether you want to move up in your career or you have a goal that you want to accomplish or whatever, is who are the people that are going to make a difference for you? Because we don't spend enough time there. And you can't do it on your own. I mean, some people think you can, it doesn't exist, or some people say, you know, look at that overnight success, and most overnight success takes about 15 years. It just doesn't happen that way. I'm going to talk a little bit about my book tonight. I'd be remiss if I didn't. And am I going to you know, promote a little bit? Of course I am. And I'm talking to a bunch of marketing people right now, so for the most part. But I think when you think about it, this book is originally, when I came up with a title, I was going to call it G7. And because G8 was already taken, and at the time people were really sick of G20, so it was. And I always, when I talk to people, I always talked about this concept of giving. And giving is just simply what I consider, a lot of people will call it networking, which is literally just connecting with people. I've always called it net giving. And net giving is just the attitude of what can I do for you? Because when you meet with anybody else, if you have the attitude of what can I do for you, that's long-term thinking. Most people go into most situations, companies, meetings, and that sort of thing with, what can you do for me? That's very short-term thinking. You're not going to get far with that. The more people you help in life get what they want to get in life, the further you're going to go. It just works that way. It's a brilliant strategy, and it's a brilliant way to go around life. It's just about giving. So the G3, you know, it's kind of funny. Last summer, my son had just graduated from Western, and he had spent a year traveling. And I actually wanted, you know, selfishly, I wanted to kind of hang out with my son a little bit more. So I wanted him to work for me for the summer, so he did. And there are a couple of cool things that we went through. One of the things is, and a lot of people won't do this, but I used to pay my son to read books. And some people say, you pay him to read books? And I say, yeah, I do. A book a week. And every week he'd read a book, and then he had to do a book report for me. And I got to pick the books. And inside my book are a whole bunch of books that I call Books for Your Life Library. And I mean, there were great books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, some of the classics that are some of the top business books around. And so I took some of that fish and a lot of these great books about how to adjust your attitude and that sort of thing, and I gave them to him, and it made a huge impression. And it was funny because I was thinking about, when my son was working with me, I was trying to think about the title, and I'm trying to think about 7 chapters to go in my book, which I'm thinking of calling G7. And my son goes, you know, his name's Jeff. I should stop calling my son. So Jeff says, you know, Dad, why don't you go with G3? You can't get 7 chapters right now. You can only figure out about 5 different areas. Why don't you go with G3? Because you always talk about 3s. People learn in 3s. And it's true. My first book was called Tapping the Iceberg, and the philosophy in the book was all about getting straight A's. 3 A's: attitude, aptitude, and action. Same thing here. And I said, maybe this is what I paid. We paid for him to go to Western for, and you know, he's adding some value. So I said, I was trying to think, I was trying to think of all the holes in it, but it actually made a lot of sense. And so boom, all of a sudden we Googled, we were checking out what out there is called G3, and we checked it out. And the irony too is at that point in time, I was doing a bunch of work with PepsiCo Canada. So I was working with their CEO and their leadership team, and as you know, they're G2. So they have Gatorade. So I was talking to, it was funny because I was talking to my son about that, and that evening I was going to talk to the leadership team at PepsiCo. There were about 40 of them, and the CEO, CO, and a bunch of them. And I talked about G7 and some other things, and then I actually threw it out to them. And I said, you know, I'm thinking of calling my next book G3. And I said, are you guys working on any new Gatorades right now called G3? And because I'm also thinking, cha-ching, you know, because if they are, if they're not, you know, maybe I can get a quick patent on this one and cash in big time. But they you know, it's not like they're going to tell me anyways, right, if they're working on a G3. But you know, they said they weren't. So I went with the G3, and it's just kind of a fun thing, and it was easy for me to do. And the book's divided into 3 areas. And the first area of the book, and what I want to talk to you a little bit about tonight, is get good with you. So it's the gift of how do you get really good at you? Because we're so quick to jump out and, you know, work on brand this and brand that and all these different things, but we don't step back often enough and take really good inventory of ourselves. You know, what does the vision look like? What do my goals look like? Do you write them down? Do you share them? Who's my dream team? Who are the people I want to connect with? So I get into that, and I have this thing too, the law of 4 to 8, and I'm big on this law of 4 to 8 because I'm a big believer that it doesn't really take more than about 4 to 8 things to excel in any one area. Let me give you an example. So health, for example. If you think about health, if I do 4 or 5 things every single day, I'm going to be in pretty good shape. I'm going to be a pretty healthy person. If I get 7 or 8 hours of sleep, if I drink 7 or 8 glasses of water a day, eat some vegetables, some fruit, and do some exercise, that's 4 pretty good things. Key is every day. Every day. What are the disciplines every day? And you know, there's a great definition that I've heard a number of times, and it says success is just a few disciplines practiced every day. And it's, you know, I was talking earlier to a few people in the audience too, and it's about creating great habits. What are your habits? What are your disciplines? So the first G in the book is the gift. Get really good at you. Learn how to brand you. You know, get comfortable. And you know, it's kind of interesting. I'm not saying when you introduce yourself to people that you have to go crazy and jump up and down or whatever. You got to be comfortable with what you're all about and how you introduce yourself and that sort of thing. You got to be pretty comfortable with that. And how you come across. I mean, that's really what it is. That's your brand. So get really good. But if you can't get excited about you, why should I? Why should I? You've got to get a little bit juiced about you. You've got to show some passion. You've got to get a little bit pumped. Figure out what you really want to do. And that's true for your career too. What do you love to do? What's your passion? What drives you? Because the power of passion is this. The power of passion is it's genuine. You know what genuine is? Genuine's contagious. And when it's genuine, it's contagious and people want it. So you got to figure out what it is. Get really, really good at you. And in this room, obviously, branding, American Marketing Association, any marketing, any people whatsoever, is you're your brand. You got to get really good at your brand. You got to build your brand. What does your brand look like? You got to build yours. You got to build a corporate brand. It's got to be a combination of both. And you're the ambassador for your company anyways. Every time you step outside the door with Deloitte, there's a bunch of people from Deloitte here tonight, you're your brand. You're your company's brand too. But the only thing that's going to always travel with you is you. So what are you doing about building that brand? And here's the thing about your brand too. Two areas you got to get really, really good at on your brand. Verbal and virtual. Both. You got to be pretty comfortable. And there's this thing, a lot of you have heard of elevator speeches. And 30 seconds, and is 30 seconds, get your elevator speech down in 15 to 30 seconds. You want to know why that's so important? Because the average human attention span is about 15 to 30 seconds. If it was 5 minutes, every ad on television would be going for 5 minutes. We'd get killed and pummeled with these info commercials all the time. You know what? Commercials and brands and companies get this. They spend billions and billions and billions of dollars. They get it. 15 to 30 seconds. So how do you net that out? How do you get good? How do you get pumped up about you? An event like this tonight, how do you express what you're all about? Now let me throw this out at you too, is you're going to connect with people tonight here, and here's what my challenge to everybody in the room is. You know, you can go around and get everybody's name. That's okay. Not really, because you're not going to remember anybody. It's the metaphor of an iceberg. It's the tip of the iceberg, right? 10% above, 90% below. You actually want to go a little bit deep with about 3 people. So connect with 2 or 3 people tonight, find out a few things, and here's 3 things I'd throw out to you to think about. First of all, find out what's important to them. That's net giving. What's important to them? And you know, find out if they have kids, guess what's going to be important to them? Their kids. Somebody comes up to me and says, how are Stephanie and Jeffrey, my kids? They got me. They got me. I'd rather talk about that than, you know, most things out there, for sure. So find out what's important to people. Number 2, what do you have in common? What's the common ground? Common ground barriers go down. So find the common ground. Number 3, and you don't have to do this for everybody, and you know, it's hard to do when you first meet people. You can't always do this. Number 3 is figure out some action you can do to make a difference for that person based on what you find out about them. But only do that if you want to move the relationship or you want to connect with them down the road. And it might be this simple. You might find out something that they're into tennis, or they just started to play tennis, and you belong to a tennis club, or you have a friend who's a tennis pro or whatever. Well, connect it. Figure it out from that standpoint. The other thing, you know, I wanted to talk about just really, really briefly too, is how do you create great moments for people? And I like to call it, in my new book, I call it milkshake moments. I love chocolate milkshakes. So when I go to hotels, I test hotels. And you know, there's certain, Sheridan's really good at this, Ritz, there's certain hotels that if you call them up and ask for a chocolate shake, you'll get a chocolate shake. And some hotels say, sorry, we don't have chocolate shakes. And I actually, when I'm talking to them, I go, okay, I realize that. I don't see it on your menu. So let me ask you a few questions here. Do you have any chocolate syrup or chocolate powder of any kind? Yes, we do. Do you have some milk? Yes, we do. Do you have any ice cream, vanilla or chocolate? Yes, we do. Do you have a blender? Yes, we do. Could I have a chocolate milkshake, please? And you know, it's kind of interesting. Most of the time, if they get how life works, I get a chocolate milkshake. I do this all the time. I just have so much fun with it. And you know, even if they're going to bring me one or not, sometimes I said, I'll come down to your kitchen and make one. And I've done that. So Delta is 50-50 on these, and some other hotels, I can probably give you a rating on hotels just based on chocolate milkshakes. But let me tell you a really great experience I had a year ago. One of my big customers is Sandals. Good customer to have. I get to go down to the Caribbean and hang out at their resorts and work with their leadership teams. That's a good customer. So, especially when I can take my wife down, she goes, hey, this is a good customer. You know, speak for an hour, stay for a week. Good gig. But, so I go down. But this one Sandals, I would highly recommend it. It's in Exuma. in the Bahamas, and it's brilliant. They bought a Sheraton property, and they have right in the middle of it, they have their version of Starbucks, and it's called Café de Paris. And I went into this Café de Paris the first day I got there, and I'm an early riser. I like to get up 5:30, 6 in the morning most mornings, even on vacation. And I'll go in. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I like milkshakes. So, but I don't like them first thing in the morning. Actually, I would love to have them first thing in the morning, but that's just, you know, that's just pure decadence. But I went into this Café de Paris, and I walked in, and this whole story's in my book, but I ran into this girl, and her name's Christiane. And Christiane was great. She had a great attitude. And I just said, I'd like some coffee for my wife. Would you like some for you? No, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I love chocolate milkshakes. Can I make you a chocolate milkshake? She said. I said, you know, it's a little early for a chocolate milkshake, but I'll be back at lunchtime for a chocolate milkshake. She said, that's great, that's great. And so I come back at lunchtime, and I walk in, and there's two of them, and she looks out, and she goes, hey, it's the milkshake man. And I'm going, this is good, this is cool. She said, would you like a chocolate milkshake? And I said, I'd love a chocolate milkshake. And I said, you know what I'd love too? I'd love a banana in it, just so I can pretend I'm having a healthy milkshake today. She said, we don't have bananas here, but I know we do in another part of the resort. I'm going to go get you a banana. I said, no, yeah, I'm going to go get you a banana. That's what we do. So she went and got a banana. She brought it back. She handed me the milkshake. And then you know what she said to me? Would you like one every day? And I just looked at her and I go, yeah, as a matter of fact, I like one every single day. And you know what? I just looked and I just said, and I looked at her and I said, you totally get it. And I loved her, and I just, you know, and I told that story to their whole leadership team. And all I said is, how do you create a milkshake moment for your guests, your customers, your clients, and your people? How do you do that? Well, how do you make a difference? How do you make an impact? How do you find out what's important to me? Because I said, hey, this is pretty good for you. It's going to be in my new book. You know, hopefully my new book will be a bestseller. We'll get your name out there. All of a sudden, it's kind of cool for me, too, because the different resorts for sandals are going, hey, we got to bring in the milkshake guy. He's going to talk about this. So that's kind of cool, right? So it's, you know, that's the way you got to think about it. How do you create that milkshake moment? And I'm going to tell one more story, and then I'm going to finish off there. And I think Deb's heard this story, and if you've heard me speak before, I like to tell this story because it's kind of fun. And it goes back a little bit, but it's all about not taking yourself too seriously. And I like to rent Batman costumes. I'm big on Batman. I just think Batman's really, really cool, and I've been doing that for many, many years. Rent Batman costumes, and I go out in the neighborhood, or I've even done events where I've come out as the Batman. And a whole bunch of years ago, I decided, you know, I'd rent this cool Batman costume. I decided, at the time, my daughter was in grade 2 and my son was in kindergarten. So I went out and I rented the cool Batman costume. I mean, you got to see this. It's like the 7-foot wingspan, big muscular vest. It's got, you know, utility belt. I had it all going on. It was pretty cool. And so I rented this Batman costume for Halloween, and I decided I'd drive my kids to school as the Batman. So this is back in, you know, the mid-90s, but I get all dressed up as Batman, and at the time I had a black BMW, so I had a Batmobile. I had a, you know, this was kind of cool. So I get my kids up in the morning. My daughter, we dressed her up as a fairy princess, and my son as a Ninja Turtle. So we all get into the car, and at that point in time we were living in the Lawrence Park area. So got dressed up, drove my kids up to the school, and I thought I'd just drop them off and just leave them, and then boom, head to work. And at that point in time I was working in Markham. So a bit of a drive, a few highways and stuff like that. So I get to the school, and just as I'm climbing out the car, the principal and a few of the teachers notice me and go, hey, Batman's here, Batman's here. Now that's better than the police and the firemen. It's a superhero. So they said, can you come into the school for a little while and talk to some of the classrooms? And I said, yeah, that would be kind of fun. I'd like to do that. So I went in thinking, you know, I'd do a quick little talk to one. 2 hours later, I came out, I had done the whole school. I had been from classroom to classroom, and yeah, I'm Batman, I'm a superhero, and all this. So I get outside, and I'm pretty late for work, only a couple hours. So I jump into the Batmobile, and I had to make up a little bit of time. So I get onto the 401, and I'm speeding excessively. These days, they would have taken my license away. So I'm speeding excessively, and all of a sudden, boom, I get pulled over by the OPP. So I still got the full Batman costume on. I'm sitting in my car, and I'm going, oh man, how am I getting out of this one? So the officer parks behind me, gets out of his car, he starts walking up towards my car, rear view mirror, side view mirror, rear view mirror, side view mirror. I'm checking him out, checking him out, checking him out. I'm hoping he's going to cut a smile or he's going to have some fun with this. He's pretty serious. So he gets up to the side of the car. I pop down the window. He looks in and he goes, Batman, where are you going? I looked at him and I said, Gotham City. And I thought that was pretty funny. He didn't. So he said, you know, that's pretty funny, Batman, but I'm going to be giving you a pretty big ticket today. So he goes, I go, okay, well, can I just tell you why I'm like this? Can I just tell you my story? And he goes, yeah, this should be a pretty good story. I've heard some pretty good stories. And I started to talk to him, and I talked about my kids. And then he looked at me and said, I've got 2 young kids. And I'm going, okay, common ground, common ground. Barriers are going down, barriers are going down. This is good, this is good. So we talked for a little while, and he said, you know what? That's a pretty good story. I'm going to let you go. I'm going, this is good. And then he looks at me, he goes, but before you go, you got to take off your mask. I looked at him, and I said, sorry, I can't reveal my true identity. Now, I thought that was pretty funny. He didn't. So he let me go. I went up to my work. I was working for a pretty big company in Markham at that point in time, about 500 employees. Security, I decided I'd walk right through the front door, make a grand entrance, still had the full Batman costume on. Security didn't stop me, walked right through. I guess on Halloween you can do that at companies. You shouldn't be able to, but I did. Went upstairs and I didn't go right to my office. I walked around and I messed with people for a little while because it was just fun. That evening I went out trick-or-treating with my kids as the Batman, big hit in the neighborhood, a lot of fun. The end of the night, full moon. I have some pictures of the evening. I don't have this one, but got up on the roof of the house, did the full moon with the Batman. So I had a lot of fun. And why do I tell this story? I tell the story for a few reasons. First of all, don't take yourself too seriously. Don't take yourself too seriously. Most people aren't. Take what you do seriously. Take what you do very seriously. But you got to have some fun. You got to let your hair down. You know, that's what people really enjoy. You got to find out what's really, really important to them. So let me just leave you with this, and then, you know, Deb, are you going to say anything else, Deb? Or,
I think Craig is.
Yeah. Okay, so Craig's going to say a few words. When I talk about net giving, and tonight, what's so important about the net give is ask good questions to people and listen. And when I say ask good questions, and this is true in life, I mean, so often, I talk a lot about this in my book, people tell. They tell, they tell, they tell. Leaders tell. And to me, tell is take. Occasionally you have to say certain things, but a lot of the time you can ask people what you want to tell them, and when they tell you what you want to tell them, and it's coming from them, how do you think they feel? You can ask them, how do you think that went? You know, could you expand on that? And listen to what they have to say, and then say, by the way, I just want to, if it's not what you wanted to hear, add on to it. But find out what's important to people too, is they are. They are. See, selling's never been about the selling process. It never has. You got to get proficient, you got to learn it. Marketing's not about the marketing process. It's about the buying process. What's important to them? How do you make a difference for them? Because if you can get that one together and you can really figure that out, that's the net give, that's the difference. And that's the G3. And you may wonder, that so net giving is one of the other G3s. The only other part of G3, the middle part of the book, is all about leadership. And leadership, to me, is just the ability to influence. To influence. That's what leaders, you're all leaders in this room. We influence people. And you can't be a leader if people aren't following you. So I'm going to be around for a little bit tonight. If people want to purchase my book, it's $20 tonight. I'll sign it or personalize it or whatever. It's not tough reading. It's pretty easy. It's already a bestseller. My first book was a bestseller too, but this one's a little longer. But again, my mother, I always said, Mom, you can't be in charge of PR or the marketing side of our company and my book, because she says, it's a great bathroom book. I go, oh yeah. Hey, it's a great bathroom book. Pick it up, okay, for when you're in the bathroom. And I said, Mom, you're not in charge of marketing here or PR, but it is a pretty good bathroom book. But it's easy to read. and not complicated. And a lot of the time, it's not that you don't know this, but a lot of the time we need refreshing on some of the things. You got to step back, take inventory, and look at it from that perspective. Okay? Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.